What's up, everybody? So, I had a thought or a moment that popped up where I was having a conversation with somebody, and they were talking about Rimuru from that time I got reincarnated as a slime, and they were saying that they believed that Predator was his best skill. It was more superior than Great Sage. Me personally, I believe that Great Sage is far superior skill than Predator. The reason being is because with Great Sage, you can actually create Predator. Without Great Sage, you would have to wait multiple upon multiple years just to get half of the abilities, transformations, and also feats that Rimuru did. First of all, let's think about this. Rimuru would not have been able to not only uh, get Veldora inside of his infinite space and be analyzing his seal, he would have to first learn about magic first, then learn about the seal, and then that seal is also not allowing Veldora to replenish his Magicules, which is slowly killing him. So then, basically, that would take, in my personal opinion, hundreds, if not 1,000 years, in order to get Veldor out of that seal. Now, that's with Rimuru processing that whole entire time, not doing anything else, but actually learning about the seal, learning about magic, and actually trying to break that seal so that Veldor can be released. That's one thing that he's trying to do. Great Sage, on the other hand, is processing that continuously every second of the day and at a higher efficient rate because it already understands magic, it already understands seals, it's just processing it at a higher rate and more efficiently. On top of that, Veldora is inside the seal and trying to help break it, but as we've seen, Veldora isn't actually spending his entire time and consciousness trying to break that seal. For the most part, Great Sage is doing all the legwork. Veldora is having fun. He even becomes friends with Ifrit, so he's not really spending that much time breaking that seal. Now, with that being said, this will greatly alter the story of that time I got reincarnated as a slime. Reason being is because Rimuru will have to be in that cave, basically praying that nobody comes and disturbs him that entire time he's trying to break the door out of that seal. Now, with that, that means Clayman and the Orc disaster that Clayman orchestrated would have basically swept up the Jura Tempest Forest. There would be no Jura Tempest Forest. That would have been all destroyed with the Orc invasion. Clayman would have been a recognized Demon Lord by then, because at that point in time, again, Demon Lords do not fight other Demon Lords unless they are provoked directly. And since Clayman, who is very calculative, he has Millis, Milim, and also Frey on his side. So nobody's going to try to fight Milim. She is one of the strongest demon lords and one of the first. Nobody's trying to fight her. So having Clayman as her friend, basically that protects him from other demon lords. So basically he would have took the Jura for a Tempest area, basically non-contested. Secondly, when it comes to Rimuru and also learning his skills, yes, um, he would have been able to learn skills from monsters, and he would have been able to still transform. But as we see later on, that processing all of that information does take time and efficiency. Now, the um, later on he does transform, and when he first transforms, you see all the smoke around him. That's because he's wasting magic cubes just to try to transform because he's learning how to transform it even with Great Sage. Now, when Great Sage evolves, and he learns how to transform better, you do not see that smoke around him anymore. Further proving the point that Great Sage has been most effectively and efficiently helping Rimuru tremendously. Not only the fact, but Great Sage does sound like the voice of the world too, which we're not going to get into that just yet. So those are 2 points. So yes, with just Predator, Rimuru could potentially learn how to use those skills, and with using those skills, he could potentially learn how to combine skills. But it would take way, I'll say, much longer for him to do so. And as we saw the pacing of the show, a lot of things happen that without Rimuru having Great Sage, I believe, in my personal opinion, that that would have significantly delayed him because learning how to use a skill in actual combat is different than actually just getting the skill. So yeah, he would have been able to experiment with them, but he would not have been ready for the orc disaster, in my personal opinion. Um, you also have the fact that, or the fact of him creating different things. Like when he goes to the Dwarf Kingdom and he creates the swords. Now, by him having Predator, he would have been able to absorb the swords, yes, but being able to process it and make it in the same image as what um, a master, uh, I'm blanking on the name, a master craftsman would, is not going to be the same. No matter how you want it to be the same, it's not going to be the same. It's going to take some time for him to get it to that level. And the reason why is because you have to process. You have to calculate. You have to figure out how much material is supposed to be there, how much material is not supposed to be there, and that's with experimentation. And those swords needed to be completed basically that night. Without that happening, it was potentially that Rimuru would not have that person. He would have been in prison for not being able to complete it, and also his reputation for his forge would have been in the bumps. So, saying that Predator was superior to um, Great Sage, in my opinion, I don't believe so. Because with Great Sage, you can, like I said before, with Great Sage, you can make Predator. Now, um, the last point that I want to make is the fight with Milim. Now, with Great Sage, Rimuru was able to perfectly recreate honey that was from a bee from a different dimension. Now, being able to do that at that spark of a moment would have been very hard for a regular person with his processing power. Now, with Great Sage and also Predator working in tandem, for the fact that he did consume it, Great Sage did analyze it. So Great Sage being able to analyze it and reproduce it was the best part about it. And that is my personal opinion on why I believe that Great Sage is far superior when it comes to um, skills that Rimuru has. And on top of that, um, I would say the other part where Great Sage is far superior is when it came to not only combat, but just out of combat situations, like perfectly remembering manga. So much so that he was able to copy volumes upon volumes of manga in an instant, and that helped improve his relationship with one of the top leader of the guild. I think it's Mayuyuki, I believe his name is, and I believe, in all honesty, that was another selling point to that person, even though he was um, not really on Rimuru's side in the first place, but it pacified him enough to allow Rimuru to continue being, I would say, autonomous and free from um, his control or attack. Now, lastly, I believe that the um, crux or selling point for why Great Sage is the better form or the better skill that Rimuru started with, and is far superior than all the other skills, is because Great Sage is the reason why he was able to speedrun basically living in that different world. Because it's basically the analyze skill, but super buffed. Again, he could acquire Great Sage through his efforts alone, but to acquire Great Sage, he would have to learn, study, and basically be studying and learning for decades in order to get the Sage title. It doesn't just come from just reading a book. No, like some animes does have that trope where you pick up a book and all of a sudden you become a sage. But in that world of Jura Tempest, or in that world of that time I got reincarnated as a slime, it came, or the skills came as you actually progressed in that world and actually did stuff. So my personal opinion, it would have taken at least 30, maybe even 40 decades for him to achieve Sage as a um, skill. And that's my personal opinion on why I believe that Great Sage not only helped him speed run to get to where he was at, but more importantly, it was the better of the skills that he got, because without it, he would have been taking, if not 1,000 years, just to give Adora free, but it would have taken multiple years just to learn how to actually use his combat skills. Alright, guys, tell me what your thoughts. Leave a like, comment, and let me know. Alright, cool. Peace.